Those two names really.
So good afternoon, folks, and welcome into the Senate Committee on Government Operations Committee meeting of Thursday, February 5th, 2026. I see some rather familiar faces in the room from earlier in the day in Senate Agriculture. We're celebrating Three Squares Vermont Awareness Day. As we get the louvered shutters arranged properly. So I don't know who wants to lead off. I have Autumn Mowing going first.
I don't think we have a replacement.
Okay,
Hello.
welcome.
Thank you very much.
We could go around the room for those of you that aren't aware of who we are. And then as you come up, if you'd each identify yourself for the record. Senator John Morley is from Orleans. He is not going to be with us today, and so he regrets that, but the rest of us are here, so we do have a forum. We have one senator on the screen, so I'll let I'll let Senator Vyhovsky go.
Senator Tanya Vyhovsky, Chittenden Central District.
You're next.
Okay, I guess I'm next. Senator Becca White from the Windsor County District.
Hi, Brian Collmore representing the Rutland District. This is our committee assistant, Callista, and
Allison Clarkson, Windsor District.
so welcome everybody, and it's great to have you with us today. And you can begin whenever you like.
Thank you so much, Chair and committee members. I'm really happy to be here with you all. For the record, I'm Ivy Enoch. I live in Burlington. I'm the Director of Policy and Advocacy at Hunger Free Vermont. And I'm here today with partners and neighbors and retailers and farmers for Three Squares Vermont Awareness Day to acknowledge this essential program and to ask for your support on requests that together will ensure the best outcomes for our communities, farmers, and economy. Three Squares Vermont is known nationally as SNAP, but in many households, it's known as a lifeline. Nearly 10% of Vermonters receive Three Squares Vermont, which is a monthly boost to grocery budgets. Put most simply, Three Squares Vermont makes it easier for lower income and working class folks to buy the basics: milk, bread, produce, eggs, and more. It's the most powerful and effective and efficient food security program in the country, as well as a powerful economic development program. With an approved application, people can shop with Three Squares Vermont using an EBT card, which looks and works just like a debit card. A trip to the grocery store is just like any other shopper's experience, which is very much by design. There are more than 600 retailers in Vermont who accept Three Squares Vermont, including more than 40 farmers markets across the state. More than $12 million in federal benefits are issued directly to participants each month. In November 2025, when we saw the historic and devastating lapse in federal funding for SNAP benefits, not only were 64,000 Vermonters stressed and worried about how they would pay for groceries, but our local businesses, our retailers, our farmers were stressed as well about filling a $12 million gap in their bottom lines that month. Vermont's heroic effort to use state funds to issue partial benefits was a relief to families and grocers alike, and proved to be a wise investment in the safety and health of our communities. While Three Squares Vermont effectively reaches the most low-income folks in our state, many more qualify and aren't enrolled. There are various reasons for this discrepancy, including complex eligibility rules, complex application processes. Accessing Three Squares Vermont was made more challenging in October 2025 when federal changes to SNAP included in HR 1 went into effect in our state. In addition to federal eligibility changes, HR 1 made changes to the funding structure of SNAP. Vermont faces additional costs to administer Three Squares Vermont beginning in October 2026 because the federal government is pulling back a portion of their share of the administration costs associated with operating this program in Vermont, and that is true for all states. Hunger Free Vermont has been closely following the state's projections regarding increased administrative costs resulting from this reduced federal funding, and we're glad to see the administration included funding for this, and we urge the legislature to continue to pay close attention to full funding needed to make sure we keep this critical food security and economic development program thriving in our state. Three Squares Vermont helps people afford the basics so they can keep gas in the car to get to work, pay for childcare, pay for rent, and other essentials. When people lose eligibility, whether because they no longer qualify or because of complex reporting rules, it harms the health and economic strength of our communities. This is one of the many reasons why having trained and trusted benefit assisters at organizations across Vermont is so important. These are people who understand the complex rules and processes of Three Squares Vermont and other federal programs and help folks navigate those processes, apply for Three Squares Vermont, and maintain their benefits. We already have a very strong network of benefit assisters in our state and are often lifted up as a model for other states. Benefit assisters not only help people apply for Three Squares Vermont, but actually support our state agency by helping ensure applications are completed accurately, which reduces administrative burden on the state, and it supports a low payment error rate. They also play a critical role in supporting emergency response. We saw this with the unprecedented lapse in federal benefits in November of last year, which I mentioned. We've also seen this during 2 summers of catastrophic flooding. Three Squares Vermont participants were able to receive replacement benefits to compensate for food lost due to flood damage. In each of these dire emergency situations, benefit assisters played a truly critical role in helping people understand what was happening, what was available to them, and what they needed to do to get the food that they needed in those moments. Investing in this existing network of benefit assisters at trusted organizations all across the state will only strengthen our state's emergency response. Benefit assisters are responding now to many complex program changes and greater needs, including losses in federal funding for these operations. Investing in this existing network will have a multiplier effect by ensuring eligible people continue receiving Three Squares Vermont, which means those federal dollars continue flowing in our economy. Food security is a policy choice, and Three Squares Vermont is an essential part of the pathway to achieving food security for all in Vermont. There are policy choices before you that will go so far in ensuring the best outcomes for all in this moment, and my fellow partners will speak to additional complementary requests, but I will highlight 2. Please fully fund the administrative costs needed for state fiscal year 2027 to counter federal funding changes to SNAP and keep Three Squares Vermont available and accessible to people in our state. And secondly, please support the appropriation of $4.9 million in fiscal year 2027 for benefit assisters for SNAP and Medicaid. Thank you so much for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Senator Clarkson.
I missed the exact amount we're anticipating the feds cutting this program. 12
Yeah, so
billion
in
for Vermont.
well, no, so 12
It's
million.
It must be federal. I mean, state and national.
Correct. So in HR 1 passed in July last year.
The big, awful, odious bill.
Correct. You said it, so I don't have to. For all states who operate a SNAP program, the federal government said they were no longer going to share that cost 50-50 with the states to administer the program. And so that they have reduced their share by 25 by half, essentially. So they're contributing 25% of the cost to administer this program in states, and states now have to pay 75% of the cost. So it's a 25% increase for all states.
Senator Vyhovsky.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. As a follow-up to that, I assume most of that administrative cost is due to federal requirements, and there is nothing we can do to mitigate how much that administration costs.
So yeah, there is no federal obligation for states to operate the SNAP program. It is in the best interest for food security and economic development for states to operate SNAP. And so the administrative cost that's needed to make this program whole in light of the reduced federal cost is really essential.
Yeah, no, I appreciate how important the SNAP program is. I guess, let me reframe my question. If we choose to operate a SNAP program, the federal government has administrative requirements we must meet, correct?
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Okay, so a lot of the administrative costs we're talking about are due to those federal requirements, and there's nothing we could do to make it an easier process or more streamlined to decrease the administrative burden.
That's right. So we're talking about, folks reviewing SNAP applications, completing interviews with folks, the staff time, the IT time of actually ensuring that applications and recertifications are processed with accuracy and with efficiency. And that is required, a core aspect of operating SNAP.
Okay, that is what I thought. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't incorrect. My other question is fairly specific, and my understanding is there were some changes in October that led our executive branch to move a group of Afghan refugees off of SNAP. I know that there is some differing opinion as to whether or not that needed to happen. Do you have any knowledge of where that sits right now, and if those folks have been moved back onto the program, or kind of what's going on with that?
Yes, thank you so much for the question. So one of the program changes to SNAP passed in HR1 was really limiting eligibility for folks in our immigrant communities, and included in the kind of regulatory interpretation, which Vermont did to implement this as quickly as they could. They identified special immigrant visa holders, so Afghan SIVs folks, as no longer being eligible for Three Scores Vermont. And Vermont was the first state to actually implement that change before USDA issued the guidance, because there was a requirement to implement that as quickly as possible. There was a lawsuit that kind of called into question USDA's interpretation, which corrected that. So now it is clear for all states that SIV holders are eligible for SNAP, and for the 90 individuals who did lose benefits in October, they were automatically re-enrolled. And we were really glad to see that the state of Vermont automatically enrolled those folks without, forcing them to reapply when they were wrongfully closed. Did that answer?
Yeah, no, I'm really glad to hear that. I knew that there had been a lawsuit, but I wasn't sure what had come of the lawsuit and if those people were automatically re-enrolled. I know in some of our other social benefits programs, the federal government is now requiring twice yearly reauthorizations or recertifications. Is that happening in the SNAP program as well? And if so, how much is that increasing the administrative burden?
That is not happening in the SNAP program. Thankfully, it would be an incredibly huge administrative undertaking, both for our state and for individuals. As you know, there's already a recertification process for most folks. That's every 12 months. For some folks, that's every 36 months. That's in particular for older adults or folks with disabilities living on fixed incomes. So we are not seeing what's happening in Medicaid, for example, with a 6-month reapplication requirement.
Wonderful. Glad to hear that. And I know SNAP is a supplemental nutrition assistance program based on the cost of food in Vermont. If someone has the full benefit, about how much of their food budget would that cover? Again, obviously it's an average. It's going to be different from person to person.
Depends on their income, isn't it?
It's such a good question, and it's a very complex question to answer in broad brushstrokes, because it is very dependent on the other resources that folks have. How much is your rent or mortgage? Do you have medical expenses? Do you pay for childcare? And so often what we see is the first budget item to go is that grocery budget, which, as you know, is why Three Scores Vermont is so essential to supporting, bolstering that budget. The average monthly household benefit for Three Scores Vermont is about $318. So absolutely, that does not cover the full cost of groceries for a month for many families. And yet that is the full grocery benefit, or the full grocery budget for a lot of families. So it is while essential, it is not reflective of the true cost of food for a month.
Thank you.
Senator Clarkson.
Yeah, this is it. I don't know, what is the national budget for SNAP? What was it so that we can look at 50%?
That's a great question. I don't have that off the top of my head. I once did, but I will follow up with you.
Yeah, I think because it would be interesting for us to look at as we anticipate 50% less.
Yeah, are you thinking about the total?
The total appropriation. What is the SNAP appropriation nationally?
Yeah,
And it's done through the USDA, right?
exactly.
That's why it's in your committee.
Correct.
Yeah, so I mean, yes, right. Congress is appropriating the funds and then USDA is administering the program in partnership with states. So I will definitely get back to you with that number.
That'd be great.
Thanks, Ivy. We
Yeah,
appreciate it.
thank you so much.
You bet.
Oh.
Oh, I'm sorry, Senator Mihoski.
Thank you. So Vermont has done a really great job utilizing federal dollars for things like the Crop Crash program and really maximizing some of the ways in which we use these SNAP benefits. Are any of those programs at risk of losing funding or decreased funding, or are they safe for the moment?
I believe my colleague will be speaking to that program momentarily. So I will let the experts speak to that. Thank you so much.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
I'm not sure who's driving the bus here, but who wants to go next? Gary?
I don't know that I have the order.
Well, I had Autumn, then Ivy, Carrie, Stella,
Okay.
Denise, and Joanna.
All right. I think we got it. All right, I'm gonna shift gears a little bit for you. Thank you,
You're
Chair
welcome.
Holloway. Thank you, committee members. I'm Carrie Stiller. I work for Vermont Food Bank.
Mhm.
And I am just so grateful to be here today with partners and neighbors and colleagues and friends to celebrate Three Squares Vermont. I think Ivy gave such an incredible update. I'm gonna just aside a little bit. But I do want the committee to understand Three Squares Vermont is still our most efficient and effective anti-hunger program. In spite of the changes that were made at the federal level, this is still the best way that we have to help people meet their needs in a dignified and choice-based way. It impacts our grocery retailers, it impacts our farms. You'll hear more of all of these pieces later, but I just want to underscore that even though the federal government made some choices to change the way this program is administered, to change who is eligible for this program, it still gets 2 thumbs up.
Yes.
So I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about Vermont Food Bank, and I want to really focus on what happened in November when the pause in SNAP benefits happened. And I want to talk about that because this committee has jurisdiction over emergency management. And we've talked a lot in the past about floods and disasters and how those impact food access in our communities. And the state really made some important choices in November. They recognized that a gap in SNAP benefits for people would be disastrous, not only for community members receiving that benefit, but for the rest of the supplemental food system, but primarily the Vermont Food Bank network and our partners, because we do not have the capacity to replace that $12 million a month with charitable food. And so I just commend the governor, the emergency board, and the legislature's foresight to have the money available for them to provide $6 million in benefits to people on November 1st. Because it took 7 days to get those benefits onto people's cards, you all also appropriated $250,000 to Vermont Food Bank, and we passed that money through to our network partners across the state to go purchase food directly as quickly as possible. And I have one of our network partners here with me today, Stella from the Hardwick Area Food Pantries, who's going to sort of talk about what that really looked like. I think one of the pieces for this committee to understand is that from the perspective of the food bank and our partners, that process looked exactly like disaster response. It looked exactly.
It was disastrous.
Yes, thank you. it was exactly the same process that we had to mobilize during the previous 2 summers with floods. And the difference in the way that operates and the way that we normally operate is stark. So Vermont Food Bank and our partners are, by and large, generally utilizing excess within the food system. We're taking donated grocery foods, we're taking donated farm foods, we're taking donated food through food drives, and we're moving that food around the state. We do purchase food, but Vermont Food Bank often purchases food in large quantities. It goes onto our shopping list. Partners order that on a monthly or bi-weekly basis, right? We try and create some capacity for planning and like logistics, right? Because there's routes around the state that we're driving this food. We had 48 hours to purchase food from whatever sources were available. I talked to partners who had to drive to New Hampshire, to the largest grocery store they could get to, in order to pack vans full of food to bring it back to their site and repack that for families, then deliver that to their 4 food shelf locations. I talked to folks who were working with Associated Grocers who said they don't really have any more food for us. Like this is a system problem because we are all trying to rapidly purchase food from the sources available. Vermont Food Bank's shelves were emptied by our partners in that moment to utilize what we had available. It was unfortunately, for a variety of reasons, not a planful response. It was an urgent and emergent response. And I've been in this committee before. You were all very supportive last year when we asked for funding for ready response in emergencies and disasters. We believe that having that funding available from the state of Vermont would have allowed us to have more capacity in a moment like that. We would like to work with our partners to plan ahead. These are not events that are one-off. These types of events are clearly happening in a variety of different ways. And each time they require us and our partners to stretch and strain an organic system that was not created to purchase and move large quantities of food in 48 hours. And so if we were able to have funding through the regular budgeting process, do thoughtful planning with Vermont Emergency Management and our network partner organization to understand who has capacity to store emergency food, who has town partnerships in their communities with other organizations where they might have that capacity, who has grocery store partnerships that they can maximize in these moments. We can create a collaborative and thoughtful process so that when these emergencies happen, we are prepared, we have a plan, we know what to do. It does not require organizations calling every volunteer that they've ever had to quickly come to a site and unload a truck.
Senator Clarkson.
So, Carrie, have you been in contact and started to, I assume you have started to work with Eric Brand at public safety, at Vermont Emergency Management?
Yeah, thank you for that question.
Because it just strikes me that we need to add, and you're probably getting to this, and maybe I'm anticipating you, but it strikes me that we need a whole piece of resiliency and food planning too, and food distribution, which is, I'm sure is a piece of our plan, but not at the scale that you're talking about.
Yeah, so great. Thank you for that. There are 2 pieces to that answer. We have had several productive meetings with Director Florian at Vermont Emergency Management. He's very supportive of this. He has shared with us that this is really not something that emergency management has the capacity for in their current operations. And there is not necessarily funding to deliver the kind of food that we have or have the access points that we have across the state. And he, I think, would love to work with us more closely to create a better plan and better operational system around this. And it is actually in the Vermont Emergency Statute. You all passed a bill maybe 3 years ago that inserted food access into Vermont Emergency Plan.
You did that.
Yeah,
But
yeah, thank you for doing
I think
that.
it may have been Senator Bihowski.
was that you, Tanya?
Senator Bihowski has a question.
It sounds like something I might have done.
Just take the credit.
I'm wondering, Carrie, thanks for being here. If you have any data on whether or not we've seen an increase in these emergent food needs over, say, the past 5 years, past decade.
Well, I can tell you that, yes, there have been 3 over the past 5 years.
Yes.
And for the prior decade, it was only Hurricane Irene. So, yes, certainly. And the fact that we've had them every year for the past 3 years, I think is the reason that we are thinking about food access in a slightly different way. Vermont Food Bank has traditionally really thought about food access in an everyday emergency sense, right? A job loss, a sick family member, a personal disaster. We have not always had to think about it in this community-wide disaster sense. And that is not really how our system has been set up. But I will just refer to Stella's future testimony that you'll hear about how that really differs from what happens every day and why we need funding to really support a thoughtful process and additional food resources. So yes, thank you for that question.
There's the gap.
Does that increase in that sort of community emergency response, how does that stress the everyday emergency response system?
If you don't mind, I will hold on that and let Stella answer that question because she is in that world on a daily basis. And I am not necessarily. I think you will get better examples and details from her. But what I can say is that both are constantly required. And so the capacity is really there for those day to day and then increases when these disasters happen, and there is not always the capacity for that.
Right.
Yes, thank you. And you did ask about the, just before I go, did ask about the ask, and you're asking for $1 million for ready response.
That's what you need to make sure we get.
Yes.
Ask in you.
I did. I just skipped that at the beginning. I got a little distracted.
So it's $1 million.
It's $1 million.
doing this food resiliency planning.
Yes, as part of our full $5 million request, 1 million would go to that.
And that
Oh,
is
okay.
in, what is in the budget? What did the
$0 for ready response. There's no money for Vermont Food Bank in the FY27 governors recommend.
And is that the first time in a while?
No, actually, the legislature has
So
primarily
we end up always
supported it.
at.
Yes.
So wait, can I just clarify that real quick? So you had 4.95 million for benefit assisters. You want an additional fund for $1 million on top of that request, or you're saying it's
Those are separate requests.
Okay.
Yes, so in my written
Was the
testimony,
reason-
my request is very clear, and I didn't read it to you.
Oh, okay.
And I apologize.
Like,
I went rogue.
it's okay. I guess the reason I ask is because just to set expectations, as you know, we're not in the appropriations committee. But we do have our letter that we draft to the
Yes,
appropriations committee. So I think if anything, it would be a request of whether or not we would include it in our letter. So I guess if we could get a simplified, because these are different than what if each person is a different one, maybe we could get one document with all of them.
Yes, I think that's a great idea, and we would be happy to.
Because I don't know when our letter comes out or when we do that.
Well, we're starting here.
BAA is gonna move across. Yes,
So,
Senator
yeah, I would ask that all of you send your testimony electronically.
It is, yeah.
To our, well, I'm not on that. Here,
Do
but I'm not.
you want my paper copy?
No, I mean, I'm sure it would be great, but it also needs to be sent electronically. Lynn, our.
For your record.
Videos.
Yes, so just to clarify, the asks that I made are separate from Vermont Food Bank's request. We're requesting a total of $5 million. The piece that concerns this committee's jurisdiction is $1 million for ready response, or as Senator Clarkson referred to as food resiliency.
Okay, thanks, Carrie. Stella James.
Hi.
Welcome.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm Stella James. I live in West Danville. I'm the executive director for the Hardwick Area Food Pantries. We are 3 pantries located in Hardwick, Craftsbury, and Albany. We serve 4 counties: Lamoille, Caledonia, Orleans, and here at Washington. I'm here to support the Vermont Food Bank's request for $5 million for the total appropriations of the fiscal year 2027. And this includes the $1 million for ready response to ensure food access and disasters and emergencies. So through a lot of the work that we do deliveries through these 4 counties for people who can't leave their homes for various reasons. We run sites where people come a few days a week to come and pick up food. And so we really are the eyes for our community. We see a lot of folks who are pretty exposed to lots of different disasters and emergencies. And day in and day out, our sites are protecting the people who are undergoing emergencies. A lot of them are personal emergencies like job loss, death in the family, injury, illness, progressed aging in place. And so these are the things we're dealing with on a daily basis. When floods come, these personal emergencies aren't put on hold. They're really just compounded emergencies. And all of Hardwick, all of our roads, inbound and outbound, are flooded. And when this happens, it traps a small specialty grocer. It floods our only grocery store and the food pantry. And we're just the ones above water. So we learned this in both 2023 and 2024. And when these floods receded, there were a lot of damaged roads and homes, but there was a lot more than that that really needed rebuilding. The snap freeze of last fall, much like the years of flooding, created unprecedented emergency for our operations. We braced for impact without any knowledge of what was coming, and we had 48 hours to procure, receive, and store enough food for an emergency we've never seen. No one grows accustomed to the stress of survival, and my visitors were deeply concerned. And though the food bank in our community supported us, we could not continue to bridge the demand. Food disappeared from our shelves at alarming rates, and all of our usual problems never ceased. And it's too much to ask of private donors, of our donated food system, of our elderly volunteers. We really do need well-laid plans. We need equipment. We need a backup generator. We need funds to purchase and store food for an emergency, because we are the disaster relief for our area. And we need additional funding for whatever next urgent emergency arises. Again, I'm here to support the 1 million for ready response to ensure food access in disasters and emergencies. And if anyone has any questions.
Senator Clarkson.
What's your budget a year?
Our budget for all 3 of our sites is 392,000 for this year. But given that we're looking at in-kind donations, we're doing almost $1 million.
So based on community, and what is the growth of your clients? What's your client growth? Like customer growth, whatever you call it.
Over the since 2020, it's been 30%
A year.
increase. I think just since 2020, it's 30%. Our Albany and Craftsbury areas, more of the rural places, have less fluctuation. Whereas Hardwick, because it's a center for many counties.
And has had more disasters than almost anybody.
Right. We definitely have a higher increase at that site specifically.
Thanks.
Yeah, we serve a lot of the same people.
And I guess that's the last question. Tell me, what's your total number of population you serve?
Of the people that
Injuries.
serve, around 1,000 almost. Yeah. Yeah, and we, I've been working for them for years, and I see the changes day in.
Gotcha.
Any other questions? Senator Yosky, no? Right. Okay, thank you very much, Philip. I have Denise Walton up next.
Good afternoon, committee. Thank you for having me here. And I am Denise Walton, and I'm a community member in Concord, Vermont, Essex County. I'm also an advocate for our local food pantry, which is Sid's Pantry. It's housed in Concord Health Center. It's run by Northern Counties Healthcare. And Sid's Pantry serves approximately 60 families of all ages. It's a monthly pantry, and we also do a veggie drop-off, healthy lunches during the summer. Today, I'm here to ask you to fully fund the Vermont Food Bank's request for the $5 million for the fiscal year 27. $2 million for the Vermont Feeders Vermonters grant program, $2 million to support Vermont Food Bank network food shelves and meal sites, and $1 million for the ready response food access in emergencies. In my community, we have a population of almost 30% are 65 and over. They live alone and they have limited families. We're very rural. We have no public transportation. We have no grocery stores. We have a small convenience store. If you need to get groceries, you go to St. Johnsbury or New Hampshire. And the current population of Concord is 1,669 people at 16.9% living at poverty level. It's a forever community partnership for SIDS to be located at the health center. Food access is available during the hours, the open hours. We can make referrals to the pantry. The produce is always fresh. It comes directly from Vermont Food Bank. And we also supplemented with the Vermont Feeders Vermonters grant, which has been great. So we can offer the fresh local produce, helps the farmers. We can buy fresh local foods. And our community can get healthy, fresh foods as well as supporting the farmers. That's important. Each month, the shelves are well stocked by the food bank. They're ordered and paid for with grants. And also our community is very generous for a small community. During the year, they have a big food drive at the Concord school system. The health center offers a turkey trot on Thanksgiving morning for collecting food, canned goods and donations. And other groups will bake bread to put into the local holiday baskets. They bake 60 breads, things like that. This is all part of our community and many of Vermont communities within our state as we continue to implement projects of survival. And we are as Vermonters, we are proud, we are humbled, and in our current status, we are in need. We ask that you please consider funding the food bank's budget for this year, for the appropriation. And lastly, I'll talk quickly about the ready response for floods, ice storms, and emergencies. I myself experienced one of these emergencies on November 1st of 2025. With the government shutdown, there were no SNAP benefits paid out to anyone. As an elderly disabled person, I qualified for SNAP benefits. With a tiny window of prior knowledge, we had a little window of knowledge and preparedness. I myself was able to make soups, grow sprouts. I made do. And the store that day, when I went to the store, it was vacant. There was no one there. I had 2 items on my list I had to get that I could afford. And so the shelves were piled high with things that I could not have, that people could not have. Fresh veggies were wilting in the stores. And the meat department bulged with its load. That feeling right there, that ignited me. It made me, I made do. I could make do, but could the families, the kids, the elders, and the veterans, our neighbors, could they make do? What if they couldn't? In response to this federal emergency, 1 week later, Vermont stepped up and helped its people so that we wouldn't have to go without. People could have more than crackers and tea. Kids could go to bed with a nice full tummy. And I wanted to thank you all for the action that you took as legislators to ensure that those of us who needed the help most got the help. We showed folks that, like me, that you also believe that poor folks don't have to deserve or need to suffer. We deserve to ask for and have choices of fresh, healthy foods and also safe, adequate programs to access these foods. I was recently surprised to learn that each month the Vermont Food Bank and our partners serve an estimated 70,000 people across Vermont with 14 million pounds of food delivered. 222 farms are supported by Vermont Food Bank and 217 network partners shared food with neighbors such as SIDS and other pantries. And with a current population of 648,000 in our state, that number of estimated people that are utilizing food service access programs is continuously growing. So in closing, it's gratitude that I thank you today for having me here, and I'd like you to please consider fully funding the FY27 for the healthy well-being of the residents of our communities of Vermont. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Denise.
Yeah. Any questions?
I have one. So you mentioned that you don't have any grocery stores there. How long a trip is it to St. Jay to the west or over the line?
To St. Jay, it's a good half an hour down to St. Jay, right down Route 2. And then I'm on the kind of like the other side of Concord, so I can access and go down to Littleton. across the bridge, so,
Yeah,
you know, it's okay, but I may do, but what about people that are 65, 70, don't drive, or, you know, it's kind of, we have a lot of communities in Vermont, we're way out there, we're rural.
yeah, for
So
sure.
these programs really help, and, you know, having the safe places for people to access that's important as
Yeah,
well.
for sure.
You may be the most rural.
What's that?
I said, you may be the most rural. Essex County.
Yeah, Essex County, is fine, yeah.
I love it. You get.
Payne is way up there too, it's
Yeah.
like Essex County, I just
Cool.
recently found out about that.
Oh,
You're
I thought you
right
were
there.
talking about Essex County.
No.
We were talking about Essex Town.
No,
Essex County.
Concord.
Concord is in Essex County.
Yes.
Yeah, I said, so you're right, you're the most rural county.
I guess you get the award.
Thank you, Denise.
Thank you.
Okay, our final witness, unless there are other people in the room that want to add, is Joanna Doran from NOPA. And again, I happened to see both Carrie and Joanna earlier today at Senate Ag, so welcome in.
That was their dress rehearsal.
Yeah,
Well, they both did a great job earlier, so.
thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Good to see you again. Thank you, committee members. My name is Joanna Doran. I live in Winooski, and I'm the local food access director with the Northeast Organic Farming Association of Vermont, or NOFA Vermont. In addition to supporting the asks of the Vermont Food Bank, I'm here to ask for your support for $500,000 in ongoing funding to support the food security and farm viability programs of Crop Cash Plus, and Farm Share. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how these programs were helpful in responding to the SNAP pause that was talked a little bit about before, when benefits were not distributed in November, and how state investment in these programs is really critical for ongoing food security. So at NOFA Vermont, we work to maximize the amount of SNAP benefits that flow directly to our local farmers and support their bottom lines. NOFA's food securities like Crop Cash Plus, and Farm Share help extend the impact of SNAP by providing additional incentive for people to spend their benefits at farmers markets, farm stands, and CSAs. Vermont's food security depends on a viable agricultural sector, and these programs provide vital income for the people that grow the food that we all need and want. Some of you are really familiar with Crop Cash. You've heard this spiel, but I'm going to give just a quick rundown of what it is. For those who are not as familiar, Crop Cash is a federal program that doubles 3 Squares Vermont, or SNAP benefits, dollar for dollar for fruits and vegetables at farmers markets. We work with over 40 Vermont summer farmers markets and 20 winter farmers markets. So when a customer uses their SNAP benefits at a farmers market, they can get additional coupons to spend on produce, fruits, and vegetables. So thanks to the Vermont state appropriation in FY26, we were able to bring back the Crop Cash Plus program, which enabled us to expand this program to eggs, meat, dairy, bread, all other staple foods in addition to produce, so that when people who received 3 Squares Vermont went to a farmer's market, they could spend $20 of their SNAP benefits, get an additional $20 of Crop Cash for produce, and then get additional dollars of Crop Cash Plus to spend on other foods that they need. So this also meant that most agricultural vendors at farmers markets were able to get income from those programs. Some Senator Collmore heard a little bit this morning about some vendors at farmers markets that were getting, somewhere around 20% of their income from those programs. So it's an incredible boost to the bottom line. I won't go into the details about the restricted eligibility in SNAP benefits that were discussed a little bit before in HR1. But those impacts and the delay in the November SNAP benefits during the government shutdown had ripple effects, not only for folks using those programs, but also for our farmers who depend on that income. Farmers market managers reported that during those first couple weeks of November, when their winter markets were just opening, they saw slower traffic, fewer customers, and customers that were navigating a lot of confusion about the changes and whether or not they would have funds on their EBT card. So we know that this kind of, disaster or stress adds on to existing economic challenges that folks are experiencing, both for, again, people using the benefits and farmers receiving that income. So something I want to highlight today is that at NOFA, I'll respond to Senator Wiehoffsky's question about crop cash funding, which is through the federal government primarily, or in part through the federal government. Crop cash is a federal program that we get federal funding through a grant. We also have to get local match funding, which is where the state comes in and has made it possible to continue drawing down those federal funds. That is a grant-based program, and so it's, our grant for that program is coming to an end, and we'll be applying for another round of funding for the next few years. But it's never 100% guaranteed, and the amount that the federal government has to fund that program is never enough for what every state in the country would want to invest in their own program, crop cash. So currently, to sort of answer that question, the crop cash program is not currently at risk this year, but we're operating with the understanding that we are getting grant funds, and grant funds are never guaranteed forever. This is one reason that state support is so important, that we have ongoing support through state funding to keep these programs going that have been around for about 15 years. Another reason that state support has been so important is that with the Crop Cash Plus program, which operates outside of the federal program, it doesn't exist on a federal level. It only exists because the state decided to invest in it. We were able to help fill in the gaps during that 2-week period before Vermonters got their SNAP benefits in November. Crop Cash has, the federal limits of being able to, you can get Crop Cash only when you swipe your EBT card and spend SNAP dollars. So when there was the pause, people who didn't have any benefits left on their card couldn't access Crop Cash. With Crop Cash Plus, because we had a little bit more flexibility, we were able to say, come to the market, even if you don't have funds on your card, you can still get Crop Cash Plus and be able to buy food at the market. This was a really important moment to support Vermonters through that really uncertain period. And it provided an opportunity for us to say to folks that have lost eligibility for SNAP benefits, come to the market, get some Crop Cash Plus to spend on food. So again, it was an incredibly important moment to show that when the state invests in food security, we can be more nimble on the ground and pivot when emergencies like that happen to make sure that people are getting the food that they need. So once again, these programs, Crop Cash Plus, and Farm Share, reflect our shared values in keeping people fed and supporting our farmers. Crop Cash Plus and Farm Share are critical baseline programs that we must continue, especially in light of federal uncertainty and changes. The state of Vermont has shown that it can be a leader in investing in vital food security programs, which have been pivotal during these many critical points that have been talked about. So please support Vermont Food Bank's request for $5 million and NOFA Vermont's request for $500,000 in ongoing funds for Crop Cash Plus, and Farm Share in the FY27 budget. All integral components of ensuring the best possible outcomes for Vermonters and our farmers. Thank you so much for having me, and I will take any questions.
Senator White?
Yeah, well, thank you. Well, I appreciate everyone's presentations. My mom is on 3 Squares and she lives with us. So there was like a 2-week period where she's like, what are we doing? What's happening? And it was very scary. And I appreciated your comments about like, how do you plan for it? Because we spent a lot of time thinking through, okay, well, if you don't get them this day, well, let's buy some stuff now. Let's make some stuff, freeze it, and then we'll use that. You know, it was like a lot of like extra logistical planning that we just hadn't had to do before. And the only reason we were able to make it work in our household is because my husband and I both work. And so we were able to, you know, like we're able to moderate it as a collective group of 3. If she had been on her own, I think it would have been a much different situation. And we love the Crop Cash and we love Crop Cash Plus. We go to the Norwich Farmers Market, which is very outside of our price range on a regular day. So with the Crop Cash, it means that we get to go and she gets to decide the things that she wants to buy. You know, it's very nice for that, like independence as well. And then on top of that, with the Crop Cash Plus, we had been buying those things separately and then kind of doing our own. But for her to be able to go and get the eggs, especially, was a really big improvement. So, and I thought milk, there was something like maple syrup or milk could be included. I feel like she bought maple syrup and it was like, how did you do that?
Yeah,
Okay. That makes me feel better because I was like, are you sure? But that's very Vermont.
And again, just from my side of things, the fact that we're helping a farmer out at the same time by buying from him or her is great. The fact is, it costs more money if you on a small basis are growing and producing food than if you go to a giant chain because they're buying from who knows where. So it kind of has both positive effects.
You're exactly right.
Senator Bielanski.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really appreciate that you made the point that it does in fact cost more to grow locally, but we know it's better for us, it's better for the environment. And part of why it costs more is because federally, a lot of investment is made in those large factory farms that is not made in our small local farms. So I love that as Vermonters, we're making those investments in what we care about, which is our small local farms and local food. My question is maybe for you, or maybe it's kind of a broader question, and you have sort of alluded or pointed to it, as did somebody else, the sort of return on investment. So we invest $1 into Crop Cash, or we invest $1 into the broader, food system. What is the return that is bringing to our economy?
It's a big one. It leverages a lot of dollars.
I think the number, I'm gonna look at the camera so that you see.
Yeah, that's where
my face. I believe the number of investment with SNAP is for every $1 of SNAP that is spent, it brings back $1.60 in the local economy.
That's what we heard this morning.
Yeah, I think there are probably a lot of other things that we can't quantify in that way. And I just want to name, because I work at NOFA, I know this is not the agricultural committees, but we say at NOFA, when we get farming right, we get a lot of other things right. We heard earlier today, some farmers testify about how important it is to be farming in a way that is stewarding our soil and really making sure that we are taking care of our earth so that future generations can have abundance in food. That is possible, and it takes investment in our farmers who are stewarding our earth like that.
I really appreciate that. And thank you for the sort of overall SNAP number. I know that historically, and this is probably still true, a lot of our farmers also relied on SNAP benefits because they were living in poverty. And do you know, and it may not be quantifiable, if investments in Crop Cash helps ease the poverty our farmers are living in?
That's a really good question. And we just heard in the House Agriculture Committee an hour or so ago, testimony from a farmer who was talking about how he both receives SNAP benefits for his family and also receives that income at a farmer's market. And so he will, be paid from his customers with Crop Cash or SNAP for his produce. And then he'll go get his crop cash and
Yeah.
spend it with
Yeah.
meat vendors for things that he doesn't buy. And so it is, I don't have numbers of, how many farmers that are participating in the Three Squares Vermont program, but it is definitely, it's all working together to support folks and helping farmers to stay food secure as well.
No, I appreciate that. And I would hope that as we invest in these programs, we're actually helping to lift our farmers out of poverty.
Yes, that is the goal.
Thank you, Joanna. Good to see you again. You've had a full day here, I guess. Okay,
Oh, it was great, and thank you for breakfast.
yeah,
Thank you for breakfast, and that was also great, wise, all teaming up to produce breakfast together. That was very smart.
so
Good use of resource.
we're gonna take a 10-minute break, and when we come back, we're gonna look at S-164. And
Thank you.
thank you
for
all for
your
coming.
work.
Thank you so much.